All right, and here we go. Welcome into the Rocky Top Insider postgame show. This is Jack Foster. My name is Rick Butler. We are back in Neyland Stadium for what? The first time in the year 2023, correct?
Absolutely. First time in 2023.
We are here for the orange and white game that just concluded just about an hour ago or so, right behind us on the field of Neyland Stadium. So I had a little bit of baseball in my mind right there. It's also baseball season, but
exactly.
Man, we saw Tennessee's football team. We saw their 2023 Tennessee football team out here on the field today, and man, there's plenty of things to talk about today. We can talk about the quarterbacks. We can talk about some of the newcomers. But ultimately, this was a spring game that saw Tennessee's orange team defeat the white team by a score of 17-14. Jack, if I throw it over to you, just kind of what did you think about this game? What did you think about the spring game overall?
Yeah, I thought it was, great weather outside.
Sure.
Great turnout. Almost 60,000 people in the stands. But you have to take the spring game with a little bit of a grain of salt.
Sure.
Top four receivers weren't playing. Jalen Wright, Jabari Small weren't active. Lots and lots of inactives. Almost 30 inactives for Tennessee football today in the spring game. So a lot of faces that we're not going to typically see in the fall, right? But defensively, some guys certainly stood out, and we got to see a little more, I guess we had a little more clarity on the offensive line battle as well.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that was kind of one of my big takeaways too. And look, we know that people are going to want to talk about the quarterbacks coming out of this. They're going to want to hear about Joe Milton, and they're going to want to hear about, of course, Nico Iamaleava. But for Joe Milton especially, man, some of it is hard to track. And of course, you can watch him out there on the field and you can see just kind of how he goes through and develops through the offense. But at the end of the day, like Jack just said, man, there were so many players missing from this starting Tennessee offense. Squirrel White, Brew McCoy, Ramel Keaton, Jalen Wright, Jabari Small, Dante Thornton, guys who maybe Josh Heupel said, hey, maybe if this was a real game, they could have gone. But because it's just the spring, they didn't want to push them too far into that direction. But ultimately, I thought what we saw from the quarterbacks overall was good. I thought each one had a couple of plays that were really nice, had a couple of really nice throws, maybe on the sideline or so. Maybe nobody did anything that jumped out to you as otherworldly, but also didn't have any big glaring mistakes at the same time. I thought ultimately this was just a routine performance. Josh Heupel said he was impressed with, he felt like they managed the game in a good way. Ultimately, I feel like that's a pretty good explanation for what they did.
Yeah, I thought it was a really good explanation for what Joe Milton did today, too. He felt like a game manager, didn't make a lot of eye-popping throws. It wasn't on the field as much as Nico Iamaleava either. Of course, he didn't have receivers who could streak the field, right?
Sure.
But I think what you saw out of Nico was really impressive. He made a great throw on the sideline, on the run, to freshman Ethan Davis for about 30 yards, and he just had really good pocket presence, good pocket awareness, was able to evade some sacks from time to time and use his legs.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Jack, give me a player who you were impressed by today on the field right here at the orange and white game.
I was impressed by Ethan Davis until he got hurt.
Yeah, there you go.
He led all pass catchers in yards today, just over 50. Had a couple of really physical catches. Little high Nico Iamaleava throw here in the red zone.
Sure.
Went up and got it. On the sideline, didn't make a clean catch, but he readjusted, made the catch, got both feet in bounds. So I think Ethan Davis really stood out today. Sounds like his injury isn't going to be too bad. It's not associated with his high school injury, so we'll know more about that going forward, but really impressed by Ethan Davis.
Yeah, I agree, and I'll add someone, too, to that line and kind of keep it on the offensive side of the ball, but Cam Selton was another player that I was really impressed with, just in the sense of we know he's had a little bit of a limited spring camp so far. We know that he's been in the red non-contact jersey, maybe some of the things at practice that are more behind closed doors, maybe he's not as active in, but man, they had him out here on the field today, and he was doing well. Just right over here in this end zone right here, he had a great about 25-yard touchdown run where the offensive line, they gave him a good gap to work with. He hit the hole, and like he said in the press conference just a minute ago, he said he had fast decision-making. I thought that's certainly something that, hey, if you're a Tennessee skill player, especially on offense, you need to be able to have fast decision-making. But those two guys in particular, I'm glad you mentioned Davis, because Davis and Selden, two of the young players that I came away with impressed by in this game.
Yeah, and I'd be remiss if I don't mention Caleb Webb. Had a couple of big plays.
Sure.
Arguably the best play I, for one, think it's the Nico to Davis connection there was the best play of the game, but Caleb Webb made a terrific 39-yard catch in double coverage.
Yeah.
Something that's probably not going to be talked enough as much as it should be.
You know, one of the things that we will continue talking about throughout the night and throughout the weekend as well, but maybe something that was a little bit just hard to judge in the moment was statistics. And we'll bring those statistics over to RockyTopInsider.com here soon. But just for lack of an explanation, it was a little bit tricky to follow along with it with the orange and white format today. So we'll have all those stats for you ultimately, but some nice running from Tennessee's running back rooms. One of those players, we talked about Cam Selton, but another one, Deshaun Bishop, one of the local freshmen from Carnes High School. Man, I thought he did a good job of running hard today. He was a physical runner. He didn't look like he had any fear. And maybe that's just one of the fourth or the fifth guys in that Tennessee running back room. But I thought he really came out today. He played hard. He played physical. And boy, did they hand him the ball quite a bit.
Certainly looks like a guy that could produce for Tennessee if injuries happen to happen in the season. But I liked Deshaun Bishop's patience. I thought that was the best part about his game today. And, of course, Cam Seldon stood out as well. Dylan Sampson didn't get a ton of run. Got some run early, but looked good too.
You know, it's funny, when I was up in the box and we were watching this game unfold, but just kind of my last thought on today is the spring game is such a weird thing, right? Ultimately, to me, it is, right? To me, there's not a whole lot of things that I saw from today or could have seen from today that would drastically change my opinion about the 2023 season. But at the end of the day, I think what the spring game does a great job at is just giving a look into where some of these players are either early into their Tennessee career or as they're gearing up for what is supposed to be a big time and a critical season coming up ahead. So we're going to be breaking it all down on RockyTopInsider.com throughout the weekend. But that for now is just some of our highlights and just some of our early quick thoughts from today's orange and white game. Jack, any other kind of wrap-up thoughts on what you saw out on the field here today?
Now, one of the best and worst things about spring games is overreactions, right? And I just don't really think there's going to be a ton of overreactions from what we saw on the field today. It was pretty run-of-the-mill.
Yeah,
Only 4
that's a great way to put it.
Gaston Moore was responsible for 2 of them, so you have to take that with what you will. But yeah, just a nice and easy spring game here in Neyland Stadium today, and beautiful weather, as I mentioned, great turnout. But yeah, as you mentioned, spring game is just kind of what it is.
Yeah, like you said, a little bit of a low-scoring game. I think you would have liked to see maybe Tennessee's offense get into the end zone, or at least get into an area where they could use field goal kickers a little bit more. So maybe that's a little bit of a takeaway, but ultimately I agree with you, Jack. I think so much of this game was just getting pieces on the field, letting the coaching staff evaluate different guys at different spots, and then taking that and going forward. But for that right there, that is the Tennessee football orange and white game for the heading into the 2023 season.
One step closer to football season. Got a couple of weeks off here in the summer, and then fall camp will be here before we know it.
That's right, man. We got a lot going on. We're going to get back into the box, and we're going to start working on some of these stats and quotes for you, the great audience out there. But hey, this has been the Rocky Top Insider post-game show from the orange and white game. This is Jack Foster. I'm Rick Butler. You've been listening to the RTI post-game show. We'll see you back for the next one.